This is another lesson on factoring. The only difference from other factoring examples is there's now a coefficient in front of the x squared term or whatever other letter we choose. I already started with the x-man because we're going to reincorporate that, and we're also going to be involving factoring by grouping. So if you're not comfortable with the x-man factoring method that we first learned or the factoring by grouping, I suggest you watch those YouTube videos that I posted first. Now for this example, we're still going to start out with we drop down the middle term for the adding portion of our x-man, which is -7. Then for our multiplication step, we can't just bring down +3 and add it to the bottom of x-man. We now have to incorporate the term in front of the x squared, which is 2, and multiply that together with our last term of 3. So that would be 2 times 3 is equal to +6. And then I have to think of two numbers that when multiplied together equal +6 and when added together equal -7. And when you think back to how we wrote that out, you should be ending up with -1 and -6. Now to start to get to the factoring by grouping portion, I'm going to rewrite the very first term of 2x squared. And then from here, I'm going to write the one that I wrote on the left. Now in this case, it just so happens to work out that the -1 can be written first. I will have other examples where you might have to reverse where you place either one of the sides of your x-man. So I'm going to replace this -1 and write it down next to 2x squared, and I'm going to write it down as -1x. And then I'm going to take my -6 and make it -6x, and then +3. So I didn't change the problem at all. I just figured out what two terms could be combined together to equal -7, because -1x minus 6x is still -7x. So I didn't change the problem too much. Now we're going to get into factoring by grouping. So we divide our problem down the middle, and we're going to factor out a common term from the left side, which is going to be just an x. So if I take out an x, I'm left with 2x minus 1. And then on the right, I can see that I can factor out a 3 from each side. So really it's going to be like taking away a -3 because we have to bring down that subtraction sign. And -6 divided by -3 is 2x. And 3 divided by -3 is -1. And again, your pairs of parentheses should be the same value. And then to get your final answer, what we did with factoring by grouping is we took the final answer on the outside of the parentheses and wrote them as one binomial, so x minus 3. And then we wrote the second binomial as one of the two sets of parentheses, which is 2x minus 1. And there you go. You factored this binomial, or I'm sorry, you factored this quadratic expression that had a coefficient in front of the x squared term. I do have another example, and this one is 3n squared plus 14n minus 5. And we're going to follow it the same way we just did. We bring down our +14 in the middle. And then for the bottom of our x-man, we are going to multiply 3 times -5, which is -15. And then we have to determine what two numbers when multiplied together equal -15 and when added together equal +14. So then if we think back to that, we should be dealing with +15 and -1. So if we have a -1 times a +15, that equals -15 when multiplied together, and when added together it equals 14. Once again, we're going to rewrite the first term of 3n squared, and then we're going to take our first term on the left and put it as -1n, and then we're going to have a plus 15n, and then our last term is just going to be the -5. Once again, I didn't change anything about the problem. It's still equal to the same value. I just rewrote the +14n in the middle. Then we're going to factor by grouping, so we divide it in half. And we're going to take out the common factor from 3n squared and -1n, which is just an n. And we're left with 3n minus 1. And then on the right, we're going to do the same thing. I can take out a 5 or a +5 since we bring the plus sign down. And 15 divided by 5 is 3, and we are left with an n. and negative 5 divided by 5 is negative 1. So our parentheses match up. And our final answer would be you take what's on the outside and combine them together. So it's n plus 5. And then you take one of the sets of the parentheses already written as 3n minus 1. And that's complete. That's your final answer. So again, if you need to re-watch some of the other videos to review factoring by grouping or the X-Man idea, please do so. Those are still up on the portal.